Murder at Ocean View College. Chapter 12. Riding with Amber. Danny was in front of his house, looking up and down the street, waiting for Amber. He chose to wait outside because he didn't want his older brother to get suspicious. The family, except for Carlos and Danny, were all in church. It was youth night, and the family often went to listen to music or play bingo. Carlos was studying in his room upstairs. Danny didn't want Carlos to know that he had a date with someone else tonight, someone who wasn't Jade. He didn't know how to explain. He wasn't sure he understood it himself. Danny was wearing blue jeans and a gold t-shirt with a picture of the school mascot, a great big bear. He knew that Amber liked his police uniform, but he wanted to blend into the crowd as much as possible and not attract attention. He knew that someone might see him with Amber, and the news would get back to Jade. But he hoped to delay that news. He would worry about telling her later. He had other things to worry about right now. Danny waited and paced. This was his first date with anybody except Jade in over a year. And it wasn't like he really wanted to go. As he walked back and forth, waiting for Amber, he talked to himself. He formed a fist with his left hand and punched his right hand every time he made a point in this conversation. Amber has information. His fist slapped against his palm. I'm sure of that. Another hit against his hand. There's something going on in the duplicating office. Another hit. I want that information. Another hit. When I asked her about the tests, she looked nervous. She ran away. It's something about the tests and teachers, but what? He hit his palm again. There's something going on in that office. I want to know what it is. He punched his hand hard and cried, ouch! He was so busy talking to himself that he forgot to check the street traffic. So he looked up in surprise when he heard a car horn honk. Amber parked right in front of the house. He cracked his knuckles and rolled his head to loosen up before the evening, which he felt was going to be awkward and uncomfortable. There was Amber. She was dressed in tight white pants, a tight gold sweatshirt with a bear mascot on the front. Her dark hair was teased high up on her head with 3 golden stripes running back from her forehead. There was a little yellow ribbon pinned on top. Her short fingernails were painted yellow, and she wore bright red lipstick. On her feet, she wore 3-inch spike-heeled shoes, gold. Hey, Danny, she smiled and gave him a wink. Danny smiled weakly. Danny sat in the passenger seat of Amber's almost brand new car. He wondered where she had gotten the money to buy it. She was a student, after all. And students, he knew, were usually poor. He tried to fasten the seatbelt, but discovered that it was broken. He held it across his chest in a tight grip. Amber put the car in gear and tore out onto the street and almost hit a city bus, which was passing by. Danny sucked in his breath. He wanted to make it back home alive. Then again, if they died in a car crash, he wouldn't have to explain this date to Jade. Hey, Amber, what happened to the seatbelt here? Well, she turned to look at him as she talked, and somebody honked a horn at her. She paid no attention. I almost had a little accident about a week ago. Tiffany was sitting there, and I had to stop really fast. She hit the windshield. She's okay, but it tore that thing loose, and I haven't had a chance to get it fixed. Good brakes on this car, though. Really good. What about the airbags? Oh, I guess they don't work. Danny took a deep breath and thought, great, no airbags either. Danny didn't know what to say, so he just held his breath and tried not to be afraid. He hoped she was right about the brakes. Amber talked all the way to the Ocean View College campus. She lifted her hands off the steering wheel to emphasize her words. She ran a red light and rolled through a stop sign. Danny began to wish that he had gone to church with his parents. He thought he needed to pray right about now. Amber just kept on talking. Danny said nothing, but wondered if he had the authority to give her a ticket for running the red light or for speeding. Maybe, if he had worn his uniform, she might have paid more attention to her driving. When they pulled into the student parking lot at school, Danny felt a headache coming on. He closed his eyes and rubbed his temples with both hands. He took in a deep breath and wondered what Jade was doing just then. He wished he could be doing it with her, whatever it was. Jade stood at the main entrance of the student parking lot. She blew her whistle and raised her hand to stop a line of cars ready to drive into the lot. She waved to another line of cars, signaling for the drivers to come forward. She stopped the cars to allow pedestrians to cross the street. She repeated these motions over and over again. Stop and go, until her arms were tired and her throat felt sore. She hated working traffic at football games, but this was a favor to Crystal, and Jade looked forward to Crystal taking one of her mornings next week. Which one? She wondered now. She hated getting up in the morning, so Crystal's offer was almost like winning the lottery. Since she had not heard from Danny about a date tonight, she thought this was a good way to keep busy. Maybe after that dinner at their house, his parents told him not to see her anymore. She tried not to think about that. Besides the morning off and trying to keep busy, Jade thought this good deed and taking this responsibility would give Captain Mitchell a good impression of her. She wanted to stay on the right side of Captain Mitchell. The investigation of Miss Quinn's death was not over yet, and Jade was not sure if her name had been erased from the list of suspects. It seemed like hundreds of cars were looking for parking in the student parking lot. Cars and more cars raced past her as she stood with her whistle in her mouth and her hands motioning to stop and go. Most of the vehicles were just a blur before her eyes. But when she saw a fancy red sports car with Amber at the wheel and someone who looked a lot like Danny in the passenger seat, she dropped her whistle and stared. He had his hands over his face. Was he hiding